For those of you who read your bulletin, today's message is the Sermon on the Mount. From Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12. Yahuwah Elohim. Your presence here is so beautiful. I thank you that the hearts have all been prepared to receive that which you are bringing. I thank you that the Ruach HaKodesh will bring revelation to each and every one of us as we listen to that which you have given. And I thank you that the esteem that will come forward belongs solely to you, and will give it to you gladly. So as your servant prepares to go forth, let it be all of you and none of me, in Yeshua's name, and all of his Bain said, Amen. Amen. Please remain standing. Verse number 1, chapter 5. But when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountain, and when he was seated, his Talmudim came to him, and having opened his mouth, he was teaching them, saying, Baruch are the poor in spirit, because theirs is the reign of the Shamayim. Baruch are those who mourn, because they shall be comforted. Baruch are the meek, because they shall inherit the earth. Baruch are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they shall be filled. Baruch are the compassionate, because they shall obtain compassion. Baruch are the clean in heart, because they shall see Elohim. Baruch are the peacemakers, because they shall be called the sons of Elohim. Baruch are those persecuted for righteousness' sake, because theirs is the reign of the Shamayim. Baruch are you when they reproach and persecute you falsely, and say every wicked word against you for my sake. Rejoice and be glad, because your reward in the Shamayim is great. For in this way they persecuted the Nevi'im who were before you. You may be seated. You may be seated. You may be seated. The most important thing about this sermon is that this actually launched the beginning of Yeshua HaMashiach's ministry. This was his first sermon to the people. This launched his ministry. When you get to Matithyahu chapter 24, that was his final sermon before he went to Golgotha or Calvary. Okay, and so this was the beginning, and I can actually do a 3 or 4 part series on this whole chapter, but we're going to do a one-day thing, and I'm going to go over some additional stuff towards the end as we get going. But I want us to really understand that this was the beginning of his ministry. Okay, and we all know that if we were to have written down all the things that he did, the world as we know it would not be able to contain the volumes of the books that would be written. Okay, so this was the beginning of 3.5 years that literally changed the entire course of mankind for all eternity, as the renewed covenant was fully established in his blood. And it began, of course, when he was first born, but the actual ministry began here. Amen? Let's go to verse number 3. Okay? Now, I want you to understand something before we get to number 3. When he went up to where he went, all he did was he picked up a little hill where he could be above everybody, so he can speak to them, so they could see who was speaking to them. Okay? When he was in the mountains, so he picked a little hill there, and he sat and he began to speak to them. Now, I want you to understand something. His voice must have been pretty strong, and it must have carried pretty good, because there were quite a few people there. Okay? And everyone was able to hear him just fine. And he didn't have any of this modern technology of electronics. Okay? That was there at the time. Now, verse number 3. Baruch are the poor in spirit, because theirs is the reign of the Shamayim. Now, I want you to understand something. Adam partook of the fruit, forbidden fruit, and his eyes were opened, okay, his body immediately died, or would taste of death later. His soul would not have to be renewed because it was a complete mess. But his spirit man was straight into poverty. And how do we know it was a spirit man? Because if you look at verse number 3, okay, it's a small s. It's his spirit that is impoverished. Okay? Prior to that, his spirit was just fine because it was with the Father. Okay? Now, why is this so important? Because I've often said this, and it bears repeating here, that sin will cost you more than you're willing to pay, and it will almost always take you further than you're willing to go. Or conversely, sin will take you further than you're willing to go, and it'll cost you more than you're willing to pay. However you want to say it is fine by me, but remember that whenever you partake of something you're not supposed to, and it's literally against the Father, it's going to cost you. Just like it did with Adam. Now I want you to understand something. Poor in spirit literally means you have lost your moral factor. The morality of Elohim was gone. Why? Because they now knew evil. They now knew evil. So the morality was gone. Why? Because morality keeps you from evil. But now they were able to perform evil, so their morality was gone in the spirit. Okay? Now, the reign of the Shamayim is actually our eternity. Our eternity. Okay? Now, I want you to see something in the Gospel of Yohanan or John. Go to John chapter 3. And we're going to read verses 3 through 6, okay? Yohanan 3, 3 to 6. Yahuwah answered and said to him, Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born from above, he is unable to see the reign of Elohim. And Nachdimon said to him, How is a man able to be born when he is old? Is he able to enter into his mother's womb a second time and be born? And Yeshua answered, Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and of the Ruach. This is why the Ruach HaKodesh is so important, and we must be born again and have it. Why? Because he's the only one who can handle our spiritual poverty. Oh, come on now. You should have got at least 1 hallelujah. He is unable to enter into the reign, okay? That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Ruach is spirit. Now I want you to notice something here. Notice that it says the Ruach with a capital R and is spirit of a little spirit. Meaning the Ruach is for your little spirit. See, plain as day. Capital R, small s. Okay? Meaning what? You are officially bankrupt in the spirit. Okay? Your spirit is bankrupt when it comes to the things of the Shamayim. But when the Ruach comes in, he brings everything you need to reestablish you spiritually. Why? Because the Father is a spirit. You have to deal with him on those terms. This is very important. Now I want you to understand something. This Baruch here, which is, we normally call a blessing, this Baruch here is universal. This one applies to everyone who has ever taken the breath of Chai here as a person. Okay, because as soon as you are saved and you're baptized or born again, you will receive the Ruach HaKodesh. So this is universal. It's for everyone. Okay? And I want us to really see that because this is the first thing that he said. He actually pronounced a universal blessing. That was the first thing he said when he opened his ministry. He gave us a universal blessing that will take care of our spiritual condition. Amen? Okay. Verse number 4. Baruch are those who mourn, because they shall be comforted. Now, the word mourn means to be grieved by your sinfulness, or by the sinfulness of man around you. Okay? You mourn because you grieve because of the sin that's in the world. Okay? Now, if go back to Yohanan chapter 14. I want to show you how beautiful this sermon really is. Is everyone in chapter 14? Let's go to verse 26. But the Helper, the Ruach HaKodesh, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all and remind you all of that which I said to you. Okay? Now, what do you think he's going to help you with? He's going to help you in the area of your comfort. He's also known as the Comforter. But he's your helper. And I want you to see this because, you see, it's his job to help you deal with your mourning due to sin by comforting you with the things of the Shamayim that he brings. In other words, peace, love, joy, and all those other wonderful things. Okay? But we have to understand that it is the Ruach HaKodesh who's supposed to be the one that comforts you. Okay? So once you repent and you get your sin out of the way, now the Ruach HaKodesh can be with you at a spiritual level so that you are comforted. You see how important that is? Okay? Now let's go to verse 5. Baruch are the meek, because they shall inherit the earth. Okay? The word meek here means to be gentle. It means to be humble. Okay? But it also means to be dead to self. You see, you can't be meek until you are dead. Because as long as you are you, there's no meek in you. Did you get that? Why? Because pride comes before the fall, and every one of us is prideful. That's how we're born. But what you see, I've never seen a dead man have any pride. Okay? So if you are crucified to your flesh, you will not have any pride. All right? So you need to be gentle and humble. Okay? Now, humble, of course, is a state where you actually have the Ruah working in you, that which Yahushua is. When the Ruah is allowed to work in your dead body, what Yahushua is, humility will come. Because it's his humility in you, not your humility, because you did. Did you get that? Now, when it says you shall inherit the earth, it's actually talking about the New Jerusalem that's going to be here. That's your inheritance. Okay? Just for being meek. Now listen, just because you're meek, it doesn't mean you're weak. Just because you're meek, it doesn't mean you're weak. You have power, you have authority. Luke 10:19. Luke 9. It is power and authority. Alright? And we need to understand this. This is really, really a beautiful way to start a ministry. I mean, he's talking about all of the Baruch that you're going to have. Or the blessing. Okay? Verse number 6. Baruch are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they shall be filled. Now listen to me very carefully. When you hunger and thirst after righteousness, you hunger and thirst for Yeshua HaMashiach. It's a hunger that cannot be quenched. It's a thirst that cannot be satisfied. And the more of him you have, the more of him you want to have. It's like you can't get enough of him. You go to bed with him. You wake up with him. You walk with him. You talk with him. You work with him. You live with him. Everything about you says him. That is the hunger and thirst of righteousness that this is talking about. It isn't what you think it is. When I say you, I mean you plural in the fellowship, because many people have taken this to be like, oh yeah, I hunger and thirst after righteousness. Really? Really? And you look like you're satisfied. Oh, I'm satisfied, then you lie. Because this is unquenchable. It's unquenchable. The only time this is quenched is when you take your last breath. Then it's quenched. Why? Because now you're in the presence of righteousness. It's before you. Okay? And this is really very important. We really have to understand this. Now notice that it says something. Now notice this very carefully. Turn to 2 Corinthians. Chapter 5. And let's go to verse 21. For he made him, so we can say, for Yahuwah made Yahshua, who knew no sin, to be sin for us, so that in him, Yahshua, we might become the righteousness of Elohim. When you become the righteousness of Elohim, you are not filled. Did you see that? See, once you have the righteousness of Elohim, because he who knew no sin was made sin for you, and then you asked him to come into your heart, and now his righteousness is within you. Now you are in a position to become the righteousness of Elohim. Once you become the righteousness of Elohim, you are now filled, and guess what? You're still hungry and thirsty for more. It's a feeling that you just can't get enough. Now, do you notice that Yeshua said, I have food to eat that you know not of? Yes. The righteousness is the food he was eating. When he hungered, he partook of righteousness. When he thirsted, he partook of righteousness. And listen to me very carefully. He partook of it so much that out of his belly flowed rivers of living water. So don't tell me he wasn't drinking. The rivers of living water are flowing out of him. He was drinking. Okay? And he was eating, because he had food to eat that we know not of. It was the righteousness of Elohim in him. When he was here as a man, living as the example that we are to follow. This is why after he comes within us, we now become the righteousness of Elohim. Why? Because we have the Ruah and we have the Bain, and between those two, we have the Father. Why? Because the Bain and the Father are one. The Ruah and the Father are one. And the righteousness that we have is the righteousness of the Father and the Son, because it's the love of the Father that gives us the moral standard which we lost in the garden. Oh, come on now, we're having some fun here today. This is good stuff. All right? Okay, now let's go to number 7. Of Matithyahu 5:7. Baruch are the compassionate, because they shall obtain compassion. Now listen to me listen to me here very carefully. The word compassion, it comes from the word compassion. But it literally means when you are exercising the same mercy that Elohim exercises on someone else. When you exercise the mercy of Elohim on somebody else, when it's Elohim's turn to hit you with a rubber mallet, because that's what you deserve, you get mercy instead. This is good. See, the Father is very, very clear in the whole scenario. Okay? You shall obtain compassion, which is, okay, Elohim's mercy on us. Now, turn to the book of Mark, chapter 1. Let's go to verse 41. If you're there, say Amen.
Amen.
And Yahushua, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him, and said to him, I desire it, be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was clean. Notice that when you lay your hand on someone and they get healed, you have now had the compassion of Yahushua for this person in such a way that you desired his desire for his healing. Oh, come on now.
Yes.
Woo! Let's get excited about something here. Why? Because I want to see Sister Gina here.
Yes. Right.
Let's get that compassion for her.
Yes.
I want her sitting right there, and I desire it, I claim it, and it will come to pass in the Father's time. This is what I'm talking about here. Oh, it got awfully quiet after that clap. Love it. It's amazing how beautiful this is. Notice that what you're actually doing is you are allowing the Ruach HaKodesh in the confines of the Father, okay, to express themselves through you. Why? Because you did. It's the truth. Come on now. If you dead, the only ones living are the Ruach HaKodesh and Yeshua HaMashiach.
Amen. Yes.
Okay? That's just how it is. See, but some of us are still alive. You know how I know? Step on the gas pedal! See, that carcass is up and sitting behind my wheel. You understand? And see, I can share this because this is what I do. Okay? I do this. Yes, I did it yesterday. Yes. Yes, yes. And then, of course, I repented and said, Father, bless that person. But I want you to understand that trying to keep the flesh dead is a little bit easier said than done.
Right.
Why? Because everything in this world caters to it. What you say? What are you talking about, man? I'm telling you what, everything that's in this planet caters to your flesh. The water you drink, the food you eat. Oh, he said my hostess Twinkies now. The food you eat, okay? Not to mention your desires for other things like just having fun for yourself. Okay? You're supposed to be in church, but you'd rather be camping and fishing, so you're camping and fishing. That kind of stuff. All right? And then, of course, we have the eros part of us, which really desires all kinds of things. Okay? So the things of this world are designed to cater to your flesh. Now, here's the nice part about it. As a dead man, you won't partake of any of it, except that which you need to sustain. Ooh. That was a slap right in the nose. Okay? It's true. It's true. And I want us to understand that. Verse number 8. Is this a beautiful sermon or is this a beautiful sermon? Okay? Baruch are the clean in heart, because they shall see Elohim. You ready for this? You are clean in heart when the moral standard of his love is established in it. You are, ready? Clean in heart when the moral standard of his love is established in it. That's the only time you're clean in heart. And listen, the heart is so clean that it can stand before Elohim. Woo, man, give me a little something here. Woo, yes. Love it. And you shall see Elohim. You shall see him. Do you realize that he just promised you eternity through his moral standard? He promised it to you. Why? Because you shall see him as he is. You get to stand in his magnificent glory. You get to see the rivers of life flowing from the throne room. You get to see Yeshua HaMashiach in the fullness of his esteem. Yes. Oh, and you get to see him say, and that's all you're going to say. I'm telling you, it is so beautiful, it's beyond. It's beyond. To actually be able to see the fullness of his esteem. And I've seen it. He showed it to me. It was, it's unexplainably marvelous. That's the best way I can say it. You can't explain it, but it's simply marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. Okay? Now, let's go to verse number 9. Baruch are the peacemakers, because they shall be called the sons of Elohim. And I want you to see it's a small s. Okay? Now, here's something that's kind of interesting. You know what the word peacemaker actually means? Someone who is peaceable or peaceable. If you separate it, peaceable is literally peaceable. Meaning what? You have the capacity within you through the Ruach HaKodesh and Yahushua to be able to bring forth peace. Okay? Now, and you shall be called the sons of Elohim. Turn to John once again, chapter 14. I'm going to tell you why we are all able to do this. Okay? You guys should have been watching me on YouTube last night. You should have been watching me on YouTube last night. Your spiritual YouTube. I was having so much fun with this.
His tube, right?
Yeah, it's you. He's you. He's you. You. He's YouTube. Listen, last night I sat down and I just, I love to go over what he's given me, and man, I had to rewrite the whole thing. It was like, oh, I love it. Okay, so we are John 14. Go to verse 27.
27.
14:27. Is that what I said? No. Forget what I said. Just go to John 14:27. Okay. I'm glad one of us knows what I'm talking about. And listen, look at what it says. Peace I leave with you. Now, listen to this. My peace I give to you. Meaning what? That peace is available to everyone, but until you receive him, you cannot get it. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Okay? I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Do you know that that's the best way to steal your peace here on earth, is to get you in trouble? And if you get you in fear, now they're attacking your faith. And he warns you, do not let your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Why? Because his peace, the devil is trying, the devil's trying to take, or Hasatan, your peace from you. Okay? Why? Because when you have his peace, you are now peaceable. Or you're able to deal and work in that peace. Okay? And because he's the one who gave it to us. So it's very important that we understand. Listen, there are some situations that no matter what you do, you can't bring peace to. Like the Middle East. That's not going to have any peace until Yeshua HaMashiach settles the whole thing. Okay? But there are many things that you can actually bring peace to. Okay? Like if a husband listens to a wife instead of arguing with her, you're peaceable. And conversely, if the wife listens to the husband instead of arguing with him, they're peaceable. Okay? Children and parents, the same thing. Brothers, sisters, etc. It doesn't matter who it is. As long as you have Yeshua HaMashiach and his peace within you, you are able to make peace with whomever. Okay? And listen, it was he who said, even if you have a problem, do you know I'm going to bring my gift to the altar. Okay? But before I came to the fellowship, I called Cisco a skunk. I told him he smells too. The Father says, do not bring this to the altar until you have gone here with the peaceable you and said, brother, will you please forgive me for calling you a skunk and saying you stink? And once he says you're forgiven, now I'm able to bring it. Okay? Peace is very important. It'll stop your progress in the fellowship. Peace was designed for a state of being that would allow you to execute the will of Elohim. Am I the only one having fun here today? Because you guys sound awfully quiet. Peace is the condition that needs to exist in order for the will of Elohim to be perfectly executed in your life. That's just how it is. I didn't make this up, he did. I was long, when he had it all written, I wasn't even here. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, I'll leave it at that then. I'll just go ahead. You guys understand it all and we're good. Number 10. Baruch are those persecuted for righteousness' sake, because theirs is the reign of the Shamayim. Now listen to me very carefully. The word persecuted is when someone is literally hostile to you because of your faith. Did you get that? And I'm not talking about Buddha or Islam or anybody else. It's because of your faith in Yeshua HaMashiach and of Yahuwah as Elohim. Okay? That's the only faith that can be persecuted. Why? Because all the other ones are false. You can't persecute something that's false. Only the truth can be persecuted. Okay? So when people tell you, how dare you speak about them like that? Speak about them like what? I'm telling you the truth. Their whole theology is off the hook. They're not going to make it into the kingdom. I'm telling you the truth. You can get upset. You can go jump off a tree if you want to. It makes no difference. That's not going to change the truth. If they're not right with the Father, they're not going to make the kingdom. That's just how it is. I didn't say it. He did. Okay? So we need to somehow, let me tell you something. What's the best way to convert someone to Yeshua HaMashiach? The best way to convert them is by allowing them to see him in your life.
That's right.
You don't have to preach to them.
That's right.
When their mother-in-law is dying, they will come to you. When their daughter's in the hospital, they will come to you. When something is going on where they need someone to pray, they know who to go to. Why? Because the truth that's in you is seen by them, and they know that there's something very special about them because it ministers to their spirit. It ministers to them. They'll know where to go and who to see. I'm having so much fun. So if someone is hostile to you because you believe in Elohim, look at him square in the face and say, God, I love you. It may get you punched in the face, but I mean, can you imagine that? You ready, sweetie? Give me. I have 3 words for you to say. Come. Okay. All I want you to say when I'm done is, I love you, that's all. Okay? What? Who do you think this Jesus is? What is God? God who? God from where? Man, I'm a scientific kind of guy. You must be out your mind.
I love you.
What? Are you crazy? Who has an argument for that?
Right.
You've just deferred the whole thing. Why? Because you're peaceable. And I was hostile to her.
Right.
I went up and down her creation. I was hostile. And all she said was, I love you, and diffused the whole thing. Because when she said that, what she did was, she said to me exactly what the Father says to me. The Father will never stop saying to you, I love you, until the day you die. But because you reject that love while you're living, then you leave him no choice but to cry one final tear for you as he says, I'm sorry, you're not going to make it. And then he has to send you to hell. Okay. But did you see how beautiful that worked? I was all up and down her religion. And all she said was what the Father would say to me. What am I going to say? You love me after all that? That's what the Father says. I love you in spite of you. I know you're a mess. I can see it.
Yeah.
That doesn't stop me from loving you. Very, very, very important. Now listen to me very carefully. The reign of the Shamayim is actually the kingdom there. That's our kingdom there. That's Yeshua's heavenly kingdom is what it's talking about. And we get that too. Do you see that this entire sermon here is nothing but a bunch of promises?
Yeah.
It's really good. I mean, it's really, really good. Verse 11. Baruch are you when they reproach and persecute you and falsely say every wicked word against you for my sake. How many of you know that some people that are going to reproach you? This is an outright insult. Reproach here means an outright insult. Okay, persecute means to be hostile with the insult. And then to go ahead and lie about me. All because I believe that Yeshua HaMashiach is the bane of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah is the one and only true Elohim. Okay? When that happens to you, don't worry. That's not a problem. Don't worry. Because you're going to have the reign of the Shamayim. And you're also going to have him there with you. Notice that he ends it, for my sake. That's really, 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 really important. You know why? Because he just placed himself where you are, which means they're insulting him, they're being hostile to him, and they're lying about him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. For my sake, meaning what? I'm there. I'm the one they're talking to. Why do you think he says, be very careful how you treat my anointed? Why? Because they're mine. They're there for my sake, and I take it personal. They're mine. I'm there for their sake, and I take this personally. When you insult them, you insult me. When you're hostile to them, you're hostile to me. When you lie about them, you lie about me. And you better be careful, because I have a reign that belongs to Hasatan, and I'll send you there if you don't repent. See, he doesn't play. When it comes to you, he doesn't play. He will be with you. He will stand with you. He will do everything that he has to ensure that you are where you need to be, especially when you're doing something and it's happening for his name's sake. Oh, trust me, he is all over it. And that's the peace that you have through the whole thing that allows you to say, I love you. I mean, trust me, it's very difficult to love those who do you wrong. This is why when David had the opportunity, which was given to him by Yahweh, he said, you know what, I'll take your judgment over man's judgment any day. Because man will not only accuse you and lie about you, but they'll perpetuate it for your entire life. How do we know? Because you still hear today about illegitimate children that he had with Mary.
Yep.
And he didn't. Why? Because he could not have partaken of that and been the sacrificial lamb. Because his matrix would have been dealt with. And he needed to have a complete matrix. See what I'm saying? Okay? So just make sure that no matter what happened. Now, this is what you're supposed to do during this whole thing. Rejoice and be glad. See, when you read the bottom, he says, Baruch when they reproach you, and you know they're going to be hostile, they're going to be nasty, they're going to insult you, and then he tells you to rejoice. That's when you have to pull him to the side. Excuse me. Hello? Me over here. I'm talking to you, okay? Do you want me to do what? Do you want me to do what? You must be crazy, man. No, he's perfectly fine. Why? You're not rejoicing in the fact that you're going through it. You're rejoicing in the fact that he's the one they're dealing with.
Yes.
Come on now, give him praise and glory.
Yes.
You are glad because he's there. You are rejoicing because they're not messing with you, they're messing with him. And guess what? When it's all said and done, he's going to deal with them.
Yes. Right.
And let me tell you something. You better be ready to forgive if they come back and ask you to. You better be ready for it. Don't hold any rancor. Don't hold anything in your heart against them. Don't say anything about them. Just be ready to forgive them. And when they come to you and ask for forgiveness, tell them you were forgiven when it happened. Oh, man.
Yes.
Oh, meaning what? I left it there with you and took off. I didn't carry that anymore.
Yes.
Yes.
Amen.
Come on now.
Yes.
See, this is a very practical Sermon on the Mount.
That's the good news.
Okay? It's a very practical Sermon on the Mount. This is why he opened up with this, because it literally encompasses the entire humanity. The one that was there and all the generations that were to come. Okay? You imagine doing that? Rejoicing and be glad because you know for a fact that they're dealing with him. And you can stand there in his peace that he gave to you. It has a purpose and a function. And listen, let me tell you, we are heading into some very serious, troubling times. If you think that the Second Amendment is what we should be worried about, getting rid of firearms, you better be careful when they start dealing with the First Amendment, your freedom of religion. when they start doing this to you right here, when they start reproaching you, persecuting you, and saying false things about you. Be ready. It's coming. Okay? So, rejoice and be glad because your reward in the Shamayim is great. Why is your reward great? Because you were able to stand in the day of adversity as someone who is dead and represent him correctly. That's a great reward. When you represent him correctly, that's a great reward. It's a great reward. It's a great reward. Get that in your spirit. It's a great reward. It's phenomenal. Okay? For in this way they persecuted the Nevi'im, or the prophets, who were before you. Wow. This is some fun stuff. Now, let's go to now, in the same chapter, I'm going to change gears here. Okay, the Sermon on the Mount is going to continue, but I'm going to change gears a little bit. I want you to understand something. When Yeshua HaMashiach came, we know he had things to do. We know he had to die for us. We know he was going to be crucified. We know all this. He knew all that. Not a big deal. But here's something that he did here, which is really, really very unique, and I'm going to show it to you. He did something on the Sermon on the Mount that made it super beautiful. Besides all of this, he added a little something towards the end that makes it absolutely beautiful. Turn to verses 21 and 22. If you're there, say Amen. You've heard that it was said to those of old. He is referring to all those who received the Torah, the Father's teaching. Okay? And those who spoke of these things in the past. All right? Now listen. You heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whosoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that whosoever is wroth with his brother without a cause shall be liable to judgment. And whosoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be liable to the Sanhedrin. But whosoever says, you fool, shall be liable of fire in the Gehinnom, or hell. Now listen to me very carefully. What I want you to see here is that when he died and established the new and the renewed covenant in his blood, he actually raised the standard. See, before, okay, it was, you shall not murder. Now, all I have to do is be mad at you, and it's just as bad as killing you.
Wow.
He raised the standard. He raised the bar. The word raka literally means an empty one. In other words, you don't have anything, you don't have any substance. You're okay, an empty one, which none of us are. But it also means foolish. Okay? And I want you to notice that he was the one who said, if you call the man a fool. Now listen to me very carefully. You're talking to the man that if you look up the word fool, they have his picture there. If you go to the dictionary and you look up the word fool, the guy you're talking to, his picture's there. Meaning what? He's a fool. That's not for you to say. Even though the dictionary says so, that's not for you to say. That is not for you to say. Get a hold of this. It is not for you to say. You need to err always on the side of love. You need to always err on the side of love. Why? Because he has raised the standard. And if you're going to err, you have to err how he errs. How does he err? In the side of love, because that's why he died. Are you getting this? This is really very important. I'm going to show you all kinds of places here where the standard and bar has been raised. Raised significantly. Okay, and this is his first sermon. Can't wait to hear the rest of it. You guys understand what I'm saying? This is significant. Okay, let's go to verses 27 and 28. Couple of verses down. You have heard that it was said to those of old. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Can we just read that? You shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone looking at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery in his heart. Meaning what? You need, as a man or a woman, to control your vain imaginations.
Yeah.
When it comes to the erotic situation of the flesh, you're not supposed to partake of that. Outside in the world or in the church, that is a much higher standard. See, before you had to get caught in the act. Now all you have to do is think about it, and in your heart you have already committed the sin. That's a much higher standard, and it was preached on the Sermon on the Mount. The standard was being set, the bar was being raised, and the people knew that it was coming because they were hearing it. This is very important, because we are living in a day and age where we no longer have the moral standard, and he raised the bar to that moral standard. I am not kidding you. I want to come in. I want you all to listen carefully. Stay right there. I'm going back to my all this English, okay? Because back then, I was pretty good looking. I'm telling you. Listen, I'm telling you because I know this is true. I used to look in the mirror. And that mirror thing, it was always a good looking guy on the other side. I'm telling you. Okay? And now, if you look at this young lady, excuse me. This young lady, my English and her are the same. They're both pretty good looking, huh?
Yeah.
That behavior should not occur. That behavior should not occur. That behavior should not occur, especially with those who stand here.
Oh, yes.
Especially with those who stand where the Father has allowed me to stand to represent Him.
Yes.
You need to be dead, like it said in the beginning. You can't allow that stuff to happen. Why? Because it's going to create all kinds of problems. And some people today say, we can do that. Why? How does this way to say? Look at Moses and all those guys in the back that had harems. Well, that's not what it says. It says from the beginning, He created them one each. Not 1 and 15. One of each. We need to pay attention to this stuff because we are living in a world where the standard. You guys ever watch those guys in Jamaica that go underneath the bar? You ever seen that? What do they call that thing?
Limbo.
Columbo?
Limbo.
Oh, limbo. Yeah, limbo. Limbo. Okay? We have raised the moral standards so low, we're all in limbo. Literally. Okay? Now, you don't even have the bar. You know why? Because they lowered it so much it's underground.
Right.
Now, anybody can limbo through it because it's underground. They've lowered the bar so low when it comes to the sinful nature of man. Listen, how do we know this for a fact? We are accommodating sin in the fellowship. It's accommodated. There are people today that you go to their fellowship and you see males with males, females with females, and they're all worshiping God like it's the greatest thing on the planet. No, it ought not to be done. And if you don't want to change, your position in that, get out.
Yep.
Okay? Not to mention the guy behind the pulpit has a couple of people on the side. And he's married to the girl that sits in the front seat. It's happening today. Look, I'm not telling you anything that's not happening right now. And he said it ought not to be done. And he raised the bar. You shouldn't even think about it. Don't even think about it. So when I look at you and I say, don't think about it, you know what I'm talking about. Higher standard. Don't think about it. Higher standard. Because it'll get you in trouble. Amen?
Amen.
Let's continue. I've got three more and then we'll close it. Okay, Matthew, still Matthew 5. Let's go to verses 31 and 32. And it has been said, whosoever puts away his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorcement or divorce. But I say to you that whosoever puts away his wife, except for the matter of whoring, makes her commit adultery. And whosoever marries a woman who has been put away commits adultery. In other words, when you went to the altar, there were 5 people who made a covenant. At that altar, the marital altar, when you're standing at the marital altar, there are 5 people present in the Spirit. You have the Father, you have His Bane, you have the Ruah, you have the spirit of that woman and the spirit of that man, and they are making a lifelong covenant. There is no reason for divorce other than whoring. Now, I'll take it one step further, and if you're in an abusive relationship where you may be killed, get out. Otherwise, death will do you part. Because he's going to kill you. Or she's going to kill him, whatever. Okay? But, this is a lifelong covenant. Lifelong. There's no getting out of it. When you say I do, you're done. Remember I told you that in order to say I do, you got to kill your bachelor life? Don't take that into your marriage. It's going to create problems for you. You better kill that puppy. You better kill that puppy. I'm not kidding you. So, I want you to understand something. And those who marry them commit adultery. Which means, if you got divorced while you were in church and you knew the truth, you better stay single. And if anybody approaches you, even though your heart's going pitter-patter, male or female, tell them I can't commit adultery with you. Come on, be for real. I'm not going to commit adultery with you. And move on. This is serious stuff that we need to literally be partaking of today. Look, you want to hear a beautiful statistic that is horrible? At the rate we're going, the church will soon pass the rate of the world in divorce. At the rate we are going, the church will soon pass the rate of divorce in the world. That's insane. The divorce rate in the church should be -3. Meaning what? Nobody divorces. It says so. All right, let me go to the next one. Let me go to the next one. 5:33. Just the next one. Okay? 5:33, the very next one. Again, you heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oath to Yahweh. But I say to you, do not swear falsely at all. In other words, don't bear false witness. Neither by the Shamayim, because it is Elohim's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool. Nor by Yerushalayim, for it is the city of the great sovereign. Now listen to me very carefully. You need to be very, very careful when you're talking to somebody. Man, I swear to you, don't do that. I swear to you on my grave, that's the earth. I swear to you by everything in heaven, don't do that. We need to be careful with this stuff. Okay? Don't swear at all. At all. I didn't say it, he did. Okay? Why is this so important? Because there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on in the spiritual that you have no idea what you've just done. That's what's happening. You are messing with the Shamayim, you are messing with his footstool, and you are messing with the city of the great sovereign, Yerushalayim. I swear by Jerusalem, I'm telling you. Oh, shut up. Matter of fact, let me put you out of your misery. Let me take you out back and beat you. And on my way there, I'm going to get myself a nice stick to beat you with. Don't do that. Listen, look at the standard. Look at the standard. The standard is now much higher with the renewed covenant that has been established in his blood. It's a much higher standard, and we need to adhere to this. See, the problem we have today is that the world is telling us we don't need a standard. How do we know? Because they've already thrown God out of the window. So we don't need his moral standard. If we don't have his moral standard, what do we have left? We have a non-moral standard, or immorality, which is taking over our societies, our schools, and everywhere on the planet. It's just going immoral. It's becoming an immoral mess. Okay? Now, because you don't have the love of the Father, the only thing you have is the hate. And what does the hate create? Division. Can you think of a better place for division than the United States of America? All because the love of the Father is no longer here. So if the love of the Father is no longer here, I don't love you. Meaning what? I hate you. I've heard children say that to their parents, and I've come this close from making contact with their brains through their behinds. And let me tell you, it is designed for that. His little rear end fits right at my fingertips. Paf! And watch him go, whoo-hoo! Followed by, whoo-hoo! Who cares? Spare the rod and spoil the child. That hatred will grow to a point where that child could potentially kill you as a teenager. You better deal with it now. And when you put them to bed, lay your hands on them and pray diligently. Diligently, because you have that authority over his children who he has entrusted to you. Oh, this is my child. No, it ain't. It's a child that was entrusted to you. Okay? Very important. Let's go to the last one. We're going to close with this. Are you seeing how important this is?
Yes.
Chapter 5, verses 38 through 41. You have heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Obviously, that was an ophthalmologist and a dentist. No, that's not what he's talking about here. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the wicked. Oh my Lord. Elohim. Forget the word Lord. That means Baal. Do not resist the wicked. But whosoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. I would probably have a hard time with that one. I'm being serious about this. You slap me, I'm gonna shoot you. I'm not even gonna slap you back, I'm gonna shoot you. Come here, I'm gonna introduce you to Smith & Wesson. No, I'm not talking about Wesson Oil, I'm talking about my 357. And the reason why I say that is because that's exactly how most of us are, especially as men, because you have now portrayed an assault upon my physical being, and I am going to defend myself. You understand what I'm saying? Very difficult to do, and yet that's exactly what he did. They slapped him on the right, they slapped him on the left, they hit him with sticks, they did all kinds of stuff. They beat him with whips and everything, and he never once uttered a single solitary statement. Kind of hard to swallow, isn't it? Okay. I didn't say it, he did. Verse 38, you have heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, do not resist the wicked, but whosoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. And he who wants to sue you, take away your inner garment, let him have your outer garment as well. And whosoever compels you to go 1 million, which is a mile, go with him too. Do you realize that what he has just said is there may come a time in your life when you are going to have to represent me to the utmost, especially if you're being persecuted for my name's sake. That's what he's saying. And this is how you are to conduct yourself, because that's exactly how I conducted myself, and you will be representing me to the highest standard that I have set forth before you. That's what he's saying. That's exactly what he's saying. And this is coming to us. And not to a theater near us, but to a church nearby. This is happening, this is happening all over the world. This anti-Semitism against Israel in the Middle East and all over the world, and even here with our own people in government, it's happening. Okay? But now you know that if it happens to you, you need to, under all circumstances, okay, do exactly what he says. Do exactly what he says. It may not be the easiest thing to do, okay? And I'm being honest with you, this would be my toughest one. But if I knew that it was for him and I was being persecuted for his name's sake, I'm theirs. Okay? And I want you guys to understand something. If they come here to mess with this church, I'm their target. Why? Because if you get a hold of the shepherd, the sheep will scatter. That's why they went after him, and the disciples scattered right out of the garden. The concept has not changed, it's still the same. I hope and I pray that you have really, really taken this to heart, because this will allow you to live in the victory that he died for, knowing everything that he blessed you with on this simple sermon that was taught on a mount. Amen? Amen.